Today we're on page 71 in our notebook. We're going to be writing equations and solving them. So your title is Writing Equations. Be sure to also fill that out in your table of contents page. There is no warm-up today since it is early release, and so we don't have enough time to do that as well as our lesson and give you some time to practice. So go ahead and pause your video so that you can set up your notebook. Your learning goal says create an equation from a given situation and solve that. Your language goal says write the steps in which you would take to solve each equation. If you'll get your notes page out, it says real world two-step at the very top. And so real world, all that means is those word problems, everyone's favorite. So it says to set up equations from a word problem, always find the total first. So the first thing I want to look for is the total. Then look for the word per or each, which tells me to multiply by the variable. Remember your per or each, that tells me that that's that rate of change. It goes right next to that letter or that variable. And lastly, look for any additional information to include in your equation. So those are my 3 steps. Example A says the Space Club is having some posters printed and they have $1,000 to spend. The printer charges $250 plus $2 per poster. How many posters can they have printed? So I'm going to need a highlighter. Anytime I have a word problem, I want to highlight the important information. So my first step told me to find the total. So I'm looking, and my total is typically going to be my biggest number in my problem. So $1,000. I only have $1,000 to spend. That's it. No more, no less. 1,000. So that's going to go on my total box. See where it says total. The next thing that my step says is to find where it says per or each. So $2 per. And so that's going to go right here in my rate, because remember that's the rate of change. So I'm going to put 2 here. My input is always my variable, and so in this instance I want to go ahead and put an X. You can use any letter that you'd like, I just like X's. And so my last step tells me to find that additional information. So the only number that's left is 250, and that's going to go in the additional information box. So now I have to write my equation. So I have 2x plus 250 is equal to 1,000. So I just took those boxes away and I wrote it into underneath where it says equation. So remember when we solved these two-step equations, I used those boxes or those circles. You could do circles or boxes, however you want to do it. Since most of us like the circles, I'm going to go ahead and do the circle method. So inside that first circle is going to be an X. What's happening with that X is I'm multiplying that by 2. And I know that X times 2 is just 2X. The next thing that's happening in my equation is to add 250. And I know that 2X plus 250 is just 2X plus 250. And that's all equal to 1,000. Well, then I have to look. The opposite of plus 250 is to subtract 250. So I've got to do 1,000 minus 250. So 1,000 minus 250. 0 minus 0 is 0. And then I've got to borrow. So when I borrow, I've got to borrow from this 1. That becomes a 0. This becomes a 9. And this becomes a 10. Well, I know that 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 2 is 7. So this is 750. Then I have to look up here where it says times 2. The opposite of that would be to divide by 2. So I've got to do 750 divided by 2. Two goes into 7 3 times. 3 times 2 is 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. Bring down your 5. 2 goes into 15 7 times. And 7 times 2 is 14. I'm left over with 1 and bring down your 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. So I know that X is equal to 375. So I have to fill in my sentence. It says they can have 375 posters printed. Example B says Mr. Glock's car broke down on the highway. Acme Towing charged $35 with an additional $3 per mile to tow the car. If Mr. Glock paid $117, how far was the car towed? So I want to take that highlighter again, and I want to highlight the important information. Remember, my first step says to find the total, and my total is my biggest number. So my biggest number here is 117. So in my total box, I'm going to put 117. My next step is to find where it says the word per or each. Well, it says $3 per mile. So I know that that goes in my rate box. That's always the rate of change. Remember, my input box is always my variable, and then I have to find any additional information. So the only number that's left is 35. So I know that that goes in the additional information box. So now in my equation, I have 3x plus 35 is equal to 117. So I can do those circles again, or that flow chart, but I have to draw it. Because remember, on your test, it's not going to be provided for you. So if you like this method, you have to actually draw it. So in that first little bubble, I'm going to put an x. Your variable always goes first. With that variable, I'm multiplying that by 3. X times 3 is 3x. Then I have to add 35. And 3x plus 35 is 3x plus 35. And that's all equal to 117. Then I look up. The opposite of plus 35 is to subtract 35. So 117 minus 35. Well, 7 minus 5 is 2. Then I have to borrow. This becomes a 0 and this becomes an 11. And 11 minus 3 is 8. So 82 goes here. Then I look up. Well, the opposite of times 3 is to divide by 3. And 82 divided by 3, I've got to figure that out. So let's see. 82 divided by 3. 3 goes into 8 2 times, and 3 times 2 is 6. 8 minus 6 is 2. Bring down this 2. 3 goes into 22 7 times, and 7 times 3 is 21. 22 minus 21 is 1. Got to add a decimal and a 0. 3 goes into 10 3 times. And I'm left over with 1, and so I know that this 3 is going to be repeating. So he was told 27.3 miles. That 3 is repeating, so make sure you put that repeating symbol on top. Example C says Pizzazz Publications is having some books printed. They have $4,000 to spend. The printer charges a fee of $800 plus $6 per book. How many books can be printed? So again, the first thing I need to do is take the highlighter and highlight the important information. Remember, I always want to start with my total, and my total is my biggest number. So I have 4,000 as my total, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in my total box. The other thing I can do before I find anything else is go ahead and put that X in that input box. So now I need to find the word per or each, because that was my second step. Well, I see $6 per, so I know that this $6 is going to go in the rate box because that's my rate of change. The last thing I need to do is find any additional information. And so I have a fee of $800. Well, I know that fee is always that y-intercept, and so that goes in my additional information, which is 800. Now I have my equation as 6x plus 800 is equal to 4,000. Remember that we like to use those circles or that flow chart, so let's go ahead and draw that. Anytime you do two-step equations and you like this part, then you're going to have to do that on your own paper because it's not going to be provided for you. So in the first one, I have an x. What's happening to my x is I'm multiplying that by 6. X times 6 is 6x, and then I'm adding 800. 6x plus 800 is just 6x plus 800, and that's all equal to 4,000. Well, the opposite of plus 800 is to subtract 800. So I've got to do 4,000 minus 800. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. And then I have to borrow. This becomes a 3 and this becomes a 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. And then I bring down my 3. So I have 3,200. Or 3,200. Then I look up here. The opposite of multiplying by 6 is to divide by 6. So I've got to do 3,200 and I've got to divide that by 6. So let's go ahead and do that. So I have 3,200. Let me go ahead and write that in black so that you can see that better. 3,200, and I'm dividing that by 6. 6 does not go into 3. 6 goes into 32 5 times. And I know that 6 times 5 is 30. 2 minus 0 is 2. 3 minus 3 is 0. Bring down this 0. 6 goes into 20 3 times, and 6 times 3 is 18. 20 minus 18, you get 2. Bring down this 0. 6 goes into 20 3 times, and I'm left over with a remainder of 2. But now I have to go back and look at my question because I don't really like remainders, but let's see if I need to keep going. So it says, how many books can be printed? Well, can I have a decimal of a book? Absolutely not. So I know that my answer is going to be approximately 533 books. Go ahead and write that in your sentence. 533 books. I cannot have 0.1 of a book or 0.2 of a book. I can only have a whole number of books. So I'm going to need you to go ahead and glue these notes in to page 71, and then I need you to get started on your assignment.